You are watching the Southwestern American Choral Directors Association Connections podcast. Please like this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel for future content. All right, hello everyone. Joined here again for another episode with Dr. Jonathan Talberg. He is our SWACDA Honor Choir clinician and conductor for the Collegiate Honor Choir. So welcome to the pod. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conference and to meeting the choir.
Absolutely. First of all, maybe you can start us out. For those that might not know you and your background, can you tell us a little bit about your musical background, how you first got involved into choral music?
Well, I've been singing my whole life. I started in fourth grade in a youth choir that my parents signed me up for, and I sang through middle school and high school. And I actually went to college on a theater scholarship, but the second week of school, my choir director, whose name was Roger Wagner, which might be a name that some of your older watchers recognize, Roger came up to me and said, "What's your major?" And I said, "Theater arts." And he said, "That's stupid. And come to my office." And I followed him to his office. And by the end of the week, I had changed my major to music. And then he sent me to a different school. So I went to Chapman University and studied with William Hall and taught high school for 5 years. Then I went to Cincinnati and did 2 degrees there, my master's and my doctorate at the University of Cincinnati. Worked for the Cincinnati Symphony in the May Festival Chorus for a year. And then I came to Cal State Long Beach, where I have been for 26 years. So yeah, I've been here. It's hard to even say those words out loud, but I've been here a long time, before almost any of our students who will be singing with me were born.
That's right. Wow, that's awesome that you've been rooted in kind of a place for a while, and you've kind of established the culture and probably built that around your philosophy. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So who you mentioned some already, but one of my questions here is who were some of your mentors or influences in the world of choral music, and maybe what key lessons did you take away from them?
Well, I think from Roger Wagner, I learned my fundamental conducting technique. I had him for a year as a private teacher, and he, of course, had been trained in France and had done classes at SWACDA and had a major grounding in Gregorian chant and in creating a fluid, beautiful line. And so I think I learned those things from him. He took me down. I remember so clearly going to the pool at Pepperdine University and practicing my patterns in the pool with Roger Wagner, because he wanted me to feel some sort of resistance in my gesture that I just wasn't getting, and took me to the pool to do that. So I learned that from him. From Bill Hall, I learned that there's nothing more boring than a choir concert. And so it was our job as choir directors to make a concert not be boring. And I think that that's really served me well. Even to this day, I really think about diverse programming and trying to keep the audience awake in an hour and a half or a 2-hour concert. Bill was also wonderful with choral orchestral works. And so I had a chance with him to sing the B minor Mass and the Beethoven Mass in C, and the Mozart Requiem, and some major works that really kind of put me into a lifetime love affair of choral music with orchestra. And then the biggest teacher, of course, is teaching yourself. So I had 5 years of high school teaching, and I think my mentors there were the people in the Southern California Vocal Association and in the ACDA chapters in California, who I called and were helpful to me, and who I worked out with summer camp, talking about people like Julie Dana, who's now our Western president, Bruce Rogers, who just retired after 30 years at Mount San Antonio College, Don Brinegar, Bill Denning, just people who I had a chance to learn from by going to workshops and things that they did. And then my master's and my doctorate, I was with Earl Rivers and John Lehman and Elmer Thomas at Cincinnati. So I really had spectacular teachers.
Yeah, some very familiar names there. And we mentioned before we started recording today that we haven't met in person. I'm really glad to meet you virtually today, but I have sat in on some of the concerts that you've conducted before at conferences. So if there's anything I can say is your repertoire selection in your concerts are anything but boring. So that was a great takeaway, and I think you've manifested that well. Speaking of repertoire, talk to me a little bit about your repertoire selection while I bring up a share screen of the SWACDA website that features your repertoire selection, and talk to me a little bit about what influenced your decisions here.
Well, I think it started with my wanting to program Jake Runested's "And So I Go On," which is a piece that I commissioned in 2015 along with Edith Copley. It was commissioned in honor of Herman Aguilar, who was my fiance and passed away tragically at a young age of a cerebral aneurysm while we were on tour, while Cal State Long Beach was on tour in Italy. And when he died, Jake's told this story lots of times, but when he died, he only had one business card in his wallet, and it was Jake Runested's. And so I called Edie, who had been his teacher at NAU for both his bachelor's and his master's, and I said, "Hey, let's put together the NAU choir and the Cal State Long Beach choir and commission something from this still at that point pretty young and up and coming composer." Jake Runested. And so Jake got together with Todd Boss, the poet that he still works with, and he collaborated on Earth Symphony and so many pieces over the last 15 years, and they came up with this text and this piece called "And So I Go On," which is written for double chorus. And it's just such a powerful work that I haven't had occasion to do very often. But I think it's so moving to people about grief and going through grief instead of around grief, and musically it's just extraordinary. There's a wonderful Conservatory recording of it. We just did a recording of it in 2016 that we just released on Long Beach State's Soneto album, and it's beautiful. So I wanted to do that, but I wanted to kind of go over the things in life that I don't know. I just sort of felt a connection to my past life and this next chapter of life that I'm in. My current husband is Matthew Lyon Hazard, and Matt is a spectacular composer, amazing Filipino American composer and teacher. He's actually at Mount SAC. He teaches at Mount San Antonio College, and took over the position that Bruce Rogers held for so many years, which is like how small the world can be sometimes. It's really amazing. But I wrote the text for Traveler's Hymn, which is really about it's about experiencing loss in a personal way and learning to move through it and find love again. And then we end with Jocelyn Hagen's Phoenix, which is this great piece that I found this summer. I didn't know it, but she's such an amazing composer anyway. But this is a piece for choir, piano, and cello, and it's fiery and exciting and rising from the ashes. So it kind of goes together with the rest of the program, which is all about love. The first three pieces, "Since Feeling Is First," is by Joshua Chai, who's a former member of SWACDA. Dr. Chai is a conductor, organist, composer, singer, wonderful tenor. And he used to teach at Concordia in Austin. And he wrote this piece when he was a student at Bob Cole at Cal State Long Beach's Conservatory. And I just love it. It's in seven, and it sets this exciting, joyful poem by E.E. Cummings that's not well known. Which by the way, as I'm looking at this, it's capitalized on this list, but it shouldn't be capitalized. It should just be "Since Feeling Is First," like all of E.E. Cummings stuff with no capitalization. And it's a wonderful piece. And then "Time" is a piece. It's funny. I programmed it for you guys for SWACDA, and then I've heard it quite a bit in the last year by Jennifer Cook. Do you know this piece, Jeff?
I think I've seen it on programs, but memory can't recall right now. But yeah, I've seen the name and the title. I just have to.
It's definitely kind of a choral rap, but very melodic and very rhythmic, and it's just about how we get filled with anxiety because there's not enough time to do all the things that we want to do. And I hear I hear a bit, not a lot, but definitely hear a little bit of Lin-Manuel Miranda in it and a little bit of John Adams in it. And it's minimalist music, but at its very best. I think it's just wonderful. Great text. And then "I Sat Down Under His Shadow" is just, it's from our great canon of English choral music, one of my favorite church pieces of all time. And I think it's just the perfect love song to set up the heartbreak of "And So I Go On," and then the rebuilding of Traveler's Hymn and Phoenix.
Yeah, now that you described a little bit of time and the construction, it seemed like I do remember that now. and you mentioned a little bit of and so I go on, and the backstory of that, and I know some time has passed, but my condolences there.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a really well-rounded program. I think that the collegiate singers and the directors will be really excited to hear you talk a little bit about this, and the reasoning for its construction, and kind of your thinking behind some of that. So thank you. While we're here on this page, I just want to bring up to everyone that the final registration deadline is approaching.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so there's this date right here of November 12th, and I will do my utmost to get this episode out before then, so that everybody can be reminded, hopefully, for the few people that listen to this podcast and consume information in this way. So all the information you need is right here on this page, including the repertoire that Dr. Talberg just went over. So get your entries in, please. Great. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this, and my next question has to do with working with singers from different universities and backgrounds in such a short rehearsal period. What's your approach here?
I think my approach is always the same with most honor choirs. I like to run it in the first rehearsal and just see where we are. I like to conduct through the music, all of it, and just see how it goes. I mean, obviously, if things fall apart, we'll stop and tear them apart. But then I make a game plan in my head as I work through each piece, and kind of think what needs the least amount of work and what needs the most amount of work, and how am I going to plan the next hours. Because I've done all of these pieces in my life at some point besides Phoenix, I have, I think, a pretty basic idea of what's going to be challenging for the students. I think they'll come in basically with time memorized because it's so fun. And just by the time you prepare it, it's got a wonderful rhyme scheme. It's kind of learning in shortened matters, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I am the very model of a modern major general. By the time you can say it, you've memorized it, and I think that they will do that. I think that they'll love everything on the concert. I think, actually, interestingly, probably the one that'll be trickiest in a certain way is I Sat Down Under His Shadow, because it's in a musical language that a lot of our singers aren't singing in right now, which is sort of that Edwardian turn of the 20th century, English choral style. So if they haven't sung any music from that time period, it's like, wow, this is interesting harmony. It's so lush, but so different than everything else that I've done. And because it's in big beats, I think sometimes just the subdivision of feeling that will take a little time, but I think the group will come together quickly. I believe in the program, and I always teach my students, look, if you choose the right music, everything else comes together. And I really do believe in this repertoire.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. Yeah, and I Sat Down Under a Shadow. I don't know about you, as with my collegiate singers, whenever I program something and after the concert passes, if somebody will ask me, "What'd you just do?" I've lost it out of my brain now. So it seems like it's been a year or so since I programmed that, and we had similar issues because, as you mentioned, singers these days are not singing that kind of language, that kind of
Right.
style, musical language speaking. So yeah, it was a little bit of a hurdle to get over that, but once they did, it was just it's just a timeless piece. It's just
Yeah.
beautiful and sings so well, and I think it'll be great for this honor choir too. What, if any, differences do you expect for an undergraduate student to maybe take away from the honor choir experiences versus that of a grad student?
Well, it's interesting, because my choir at Long Beach State is mostly undergrads, both of my choirs. In my university choir, it's 50 undergrads and one graduate student. And in the chamber choir, it's 35 undergrads and 5 graduate students. So I'm used to the mix. I mean, I kind of treat it the same. I will say that I treat a college rehearsal the same way as I treat the professional rehearsal. And I frequently will tell people that my lesson plan is, so here's where what the music is supposed to sound like, and I have a really, hopefully in my head, a perfect concept of how I want that to sound, and here's where the choir is, and the magic is, and the lesson plan is everything that takes the choir from here in an arc to hear. And so I don't know that that matters whether they're graduate students or undergraduates. For me, my only hope is that everybody comes prepared. And I think for every honor choir that's really the key is unless you're just a crack reader, and maybe some graduate students, are better readers just because they've had more years of experience than undergrads. And I could imagine a graduate student saying, oh, yeah, okay, I guess, my teacher's saying I should do this. I'm going to go do this, but I'm writing this paper and I'll read it, the music when I get there, in a way that I think most most undergrads would say, I got to really prepare this stuff. So I hope they come with all notes and rhythms learned. I intentionally chose an all English program because we don't have very much time. And, I thought, well, if we take the danger of diction outside of our own language out of the components of things to conquer in a day and a half, then I think it will have a chance of being much more successful at the musical and artistic parts of the program.
Yeah, I absolutely, completely resonate with what you said. I'm at an all undergrad institution here. We have grad programs, just not in music. So all of my students are undergrad. The reason my mind went kind of to that question is because the grad students at that point would likely be going into the choral or vocal profession. And a lot of our undergrads may be pursuing other disciplines. Like
Oh,
I
I
have,
see.
psychology and, cell and molecular biology majors and history majors and elementary education majors and that kind of thing. So, that was kind of the way my mind was thinking for
Oh,
that
I
question.
see. I love non-music majors. I love
Hmm.
them. I love working. I have my choir has, I have it. I have English majors. I have mechanical engineering, several mechanical engineering majors this year. I had a student who graduated who was in Long Beach State's program for ride design. We create engineers who go out to Disney and Knott's and Six Flags and all those things and help design the next rides, which is really cool. And she was a wonderful singer. I have an elementary education major. I mean, the one thing that they have in common is they love to sing and they love to be with other people. So I would love to have lots and lots of students like that in the group.
Absolutely, that's awesome. We talked a little bit about even with the I sat down under his shadow. That musical language today is a little different than that English tradition of Edwardian. So, how have you seen collegiate choral singing evolve over the years? That's a big
I mean,
question. I know.
that is a big question. I've been teaching for 26 years. I think, well, clearly the biggest difference, which I'm not really demonstrating so much on this concert because it's almost all contemporary American composers. The biggest difference is that when we talk about world music in the choral genre now, we're not just talking about Italy, France, Germany, and Sweden, where when I was a student, a world music concert was Europe and frequently Northern Europe with maybe dipping into, the Florentine Camerata or something in Italy, some Monteverdi or the Venetian Polychoral School, but that was about as far south as we went. And now, in any given year, I'm doing music from Africa and music from Asia and music from South America or Mexico. I mean, I did a whole Cinco de Mayo concert last year on Cinco de Mayo with mostly Mexican music and mostly Mexican classical music, written by composers who, are trained and live in Mexico City and women Mexican composers and that sort of thing. I don't think I studied a single composer from South America throughout my doctorate. I can't, at least I don't really recall any. I recall studying some settings of Spanish and Latino texts by Western composers, but and that's not to put anything on the conservatory that I went to. It's just that was the time. And so that's changed a lot. I think also repertoire, I'm very conscious to have music by women, as you'll see in this program, and try to have some diversity of people, so it's not just all white men. Um, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, things have changed over the years as far as repertoire and world music, as you mentioned. I've experienced similar things, and the world is just so much more wide open. And
Right.
what great music is coming to us now from cultures and and places that we didn't previously have, or at least weren't brought to the fore as appropriately as they are now. So I think it's a great thing, and our minds and exposure to those things are expanding us ever greater every year. So I'm at a loss for words there, but yeah, that's exactly what I've experienced too. So this kind of brings me to another question, especially concerning like the digital age and its quick progression. What advice would you give to emerging conductors that are just starting out in the field?
I was talking about this yesterday or Wednesday. I was giving a class, and I think that we're safe, actually. I think choir directors are going to be more needed in the next century than they were needed in the last century. Because I don't know about you, but my students are thrilled to come into rehearsal and put their phone down on a table. We don't bring phones into our rehearsal space. We actually put them down when we walk
Yeah,
out.
same. Mm-hmm.
And my students are thrilled to do that, and come in and be with each other in communion and fellowship and love for a couple of hours, looking into each other's eyes, singing to each other, and being human. They spend so much, all of our students and all of us spend so much time doing this, in any given day, that it feels really good not to do that. Um, I worry more about the creation of new music. There's been discussions about what is going to be AI's role in writing choral music or arranging choral music or that sort of thing. But I just can't imagine a computer having the heart that Jake Runestad or Jocelyn Hagan has. I don't think that's going to happen. And they're certainly not going to be able to find a poem that moves that heart and sets it to music. And I think in a world that's becoming more and more computer generated, this very basic human thing of singing together is safe and sacred.
Yeah, I agree with you. And they are our students and singers. And I also have a town and gown, as we call it, the university community chorus.
Yeah.
Even the older folks are craving that kind of human interaction that they're not getting often in other hours of the day because their digital devices have captured our time. So yeah, setting down the phone and just having that real human communal interaction, I think is vital and needed for humanity. And I agree with you also that I don't think AI can even come close,
Yeah.
just to the human interaction that some of these composers are able to tap into. At least I haven't seen it yet. And honestly, I hope I don't ever see it.
Yeah.
I'd love to
We had
see.
a rehearsal.
No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, we had a rehearsal last week, and the choir took a break. This was my university choir, which is almost all undergrads and really wonderful singers. And we took a break, and we came back from the break, and it sounded like a rainy day in Southern California in ninth grade. I mean, they were just so talkative, and I couldn't get their attention. I finally went over to the piano and played a couple of chords, and they looked up. I'm like, I've been waiting for this day. You guys. You guys all love each other. You're all talking. It feels so great to say, let's focus back into the music now after the break. Because 2 months earlier, we'd had our first rehearsal. I took a break, and 30 of them were on their phones at the break. They went over to get their phone. They came back to their chair. They sat on their phone. And I said, hey, everybody in the room, the people who are sitting to your right and your left, you might have the future parent of your children there. You might
Right.
have your future physician. You might have somebody that you're going to go to grad school with. You're going to have someone you're going to travel with. You're going to make a lot of art with. I challenge you. I challenge you not to pick up your phones during the break. And it's amazing like what that did and how successful they've been at creating a real human community. And I mean, the phones are here to stay, right? I always say to them, there's 1,000 people in Silicon Valley, really close, just north of where we are, 1,000 people who are spending every minute of every day trying to figure out how to keep them glued to that phone. Fortunately, Mozart's fugues are every bit as interesting. And if we can point that out, and teach those things, then I think we teachers have a fighting chance of at least pulling their attention in a different direction for a while.
Yeah, I love that story too because I've had similar experiences where it's just the social aspect of of choir. It's unlike even other ensembles in our band and orchestra colleagues' world. It's just a different culture, and I thrive in it. I love it, and I think you're on the right path there to encourage them to set the phone down sometimes. And maybe I'm a crypt keeper. I don't know. I'm trying to kind of back away from online stuff as much as I can, and still be kind of
You say as we're zooming and making a podcast.
right. This is this is not my forte. People, I've voiced that before, but I'm glad to do it for SWACDA. And so I have just kind of one other question for you here before we kind of close. But what's a challenge maybe that you faced in your career that helped you grow as a conductor, an educator, a musician? Maybe you can speak to something like that.
Well, I think the hardest thing that we teachers ever face is the death of a student. And if you teach long enough, unfortunately, the odds are against you. And at some point, you're going to have a student pass. There's going to be an accident, or someone's going to get sick or something. And so, and I have lost two students in my time, and I just lost an alum who had become a really wonderful colleague last week. And I think that with my first student who passed away, and he's had a stroke, they think, I'm sorry, a cardiac aneurysm. He was 24 years old. He was on my ACDA board. He lived with 5 other students at Cal State Long Beach, 4 of whom were in the choir with him. And it was just so heartbreaking. And it really taught me that the most important thing is keeping the most important thing, which is community. And so this happened. He passed away 2 weeks before we were performing at the NCCO at Yale. And I just canceled rehearsal and said, let's all spend this week together. Let's go eat, let's go do these things, and we can rehearse, the music. We're in good enough shape. We'll rehearse the day before we leave for New Haven. And I think that, maybe that performance at New Haven, it was a performance that I was really proud of, because my students came together and overcame terrible difficulty, but they did it with such love. And we had an expression that trip that, I'd ask them, where are we? And they would say, we are right here, right now, because we just had to be present for that trip. And I think learning to be present through all the difficulties, many of us in higher education are facing, political issues at our institutions, and our students are coming from different political backgrounds. And I think the choir room is a safe place, to not to make politics off limits, but to have safe and respectful conversations as it relates to the music that we're doing. And I think that that's been challenging in the last 8 years, for certain, for me as a teacher, even in Southern California, which leans very strongly in one direction. And so I think learning to negotiate loss and learning to negotiate strong political feelings would be the two things that I would say have challenged me as a teacher, and have made me grow.
Yeah, likewise. And thank you for that. And just thinking back to your first example, I just want to say sorry for your loss of your students and alum, and for your choir's loss as well. But what a great way to process grief together through community that we established through the making of choral music with people of like mind, maybe not of like mind, that come together
Right.
with a similar purpose, at least.
Yeah.
That come from all different walks of life, and so that's beautiful. But as you mentioned, yeah, I deal with a lot of that. It's very different for me in Oklahoma, as you can imagine. It's a very different set of problems politically. From one side to the other, probably very different than what you deal with, but still, very much, not heated debates or arguments or anything like that. It's very respectful, and it's very what's the word I'm looking for? Healthy. Healthy. Yeah, it's a healthy debate, and But what other place have we found? I haven't found another place where that kind of rhetoric and debate and conversation happen better than in the choral classroom, the choral room, where we have just come together to make music, and then as a result of sometimes the music itself, we can have these conversations. So
Right.
yeah, that's beautiful. Well said. Well said. Well, the purpose of this podcast, of course, is to get directors and students stoked and excited to work with you and to get to know you a little better and to learn about your repertoire choices and all of that. What have I left out? What have I missed that you want to offer up for these folks?
I guess the only thing that I'd say is that my students, I think, would tell you that I run really fun rehearsals, that we're going to have a good time. We're going to work really hard, but in that hard work is going to be a lot of joy and maybe some tears, but some really authentically beautiful music making, and that I hope they'll join me. I hope people, from all over the Southwest will come and sing with me. I think they'll really have a great time, and they'll make new friends. These people will become their future colleagues as educators and teachers for those who are in that route or just anywhere in the world of music.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to be wrapped up in a few things and floating around the conference, but I do hope that I get to come and step into your rehearsal, watch you work a little bit. I definitely will be there for the performance. So I'm looking forward to it just personally. Thank you for taking the time today. If people want to follow you online or...
Jonathan Talberg on Instagram is the easiest way. Yeah, it's just my name.
Perfect. And it looks like we see your email address right here.
Right. And I'm also on
profile.
Facebook. I think I'm the only Jonathan Talberg that there is. So,
well,
and
great,
certainly
great.
anybody who would be listening to this podcast, we would have lots of mutual friends, I would imagine.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me, and we'll call it there. Thank you for your time.
All right. Absolutely. Thanks for the conversation, Jeff. Good talking with you.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.